Yeah, here we go. We are live. Hi, everyone. We just hit 10,000 subscribers around 10 days ago. And so I want to thank you all for being part of the journey. I got to be honest with you all, getting this channel up and running over the last year wasn't exactly a walk in the park. I started the beginning of July, and the beginning of August, Beirut, which is the city where I live, was hit by this massive explosion, which just ripped the whole city apart. And so, yeah, I mean, just doing life in general became really challenging, let alone trying to do YouTube as a newbie. But yeah, I guess through trials and explosions and bombs and temptations, I can now really say and honestly say that I absolutely love doing this. And I also want to say thanks to everyone who jumped on board and, dropped an encouraging comment, subscribed and asked questions and all of that. That's really cool. Thanks a lot. In case you're here for the first time, my name is Lucas, and the aim of this channel is to just really create meaningful conversations about God. And I consider myself beyond blessed to get connected to people like you who are into this stuff. Now, one of the key sources which inspired me to actually get started with this is this lovely chap here, Cameron Bertuzzi. Welcome, Cameron. Thank you so much for coming onto my channel today. And let me also thank you officially, so to speak, for just being the source of inspiration that you've been.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I've been following your channel, I think, around when it started, and I feel like every single video you put out, you get better and better.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's difficult to try and constantly refine what you're doing, and yeah, self-criticism is, I guess, part of the ingredients that you need to have. So yeah,
you're doing a good job. You've got good lighting. I mean, that's kind of difficult to get. Just like the aesthetic side of things, that can be difficult. But it seems like, what is your background, if you don't mind me asking? I know I'm not interviewing you, but
yeah. Well, I work with a studio in Beirut, so I actually work with people who know what they're doing when it comes to lighting and the technicality. So yeah, that means a lot coming from you as a photographer. Thanks so much.
Yeah, and it looks great. It's great.
Thanks. Now, I assume that everyone here probably knows you already anyway, but just in case, can you tell us in like 60 seconds who you are, what you do and what your ministry is all about?
Yeah, so I'm Cameron Bertuzzi. I run a YouTube channel called Capturing Christianity, it's not just a YouTube channel. It actually started as a blog, turned into what it is now, which is mainly a YouTube channel where I interview experts. I host debates between Christians and non-Christians, and also post my own videos on my channel. Everything related to apologetics. The tagline of our ministry is exposing the intellectual side of Christian belief. A little backstory on me. So it wasn't me that became an atheist about 10 years ago at this point. And that's what sent me on this journey to discover whether there was any good reason to think Christianity was true. And so in my journey, I discovered that there was a whole lot of evidence that Christianity was true. And that really inspired me to sort of share that with the world. And so it's been this process, this journey of interviewing these different experts, and it's just been a lot of fun. And the response has been overwhelming. I mean, you're celebrating 10K. I'm pretty sure that you're going to be celebrating 100K like our channel just did recently as well. So yeah, it's just incredible how people love this content. And I never would have imagined, even 10,000 subscribers seems just a ridiculous amount to me. Yeah. So it's really cool that people are picking up on this and really enjoying the content, getting something out of it.
Yeah, that's right. What I couldn't imagine before I started is that there's a real sense of community. I mean, people who are on this and people who write messages and comments, I feel like, wow, I'd never expected that people are actually, personally involved so much on a platform that just happens online. Yeah. So guys, I want to encourage you, check out Cameron's channel. If you haven't done so yet, you'll find the link right at the top in the description box below. You'll learn an awful lot from him and from the people he hosts. So you definitely want to, be linked to what's happening on Capturing Christianity. So Cameron, I want to pick your brain on a couple of, things, both intellectual and more personal stuff. But for starters, if is the most compelling or most powerful argument atheists can advance against the existence of God?
Sorry, you cut out right after you said, what do you believe? And then it cut out.
Sorry. Let me say it again. What do you believe is the most powerful argument an atheist can advance for the existence of God?
For the existence of no God?
Against the existence of God. Sorry,
Yeah.
I mixed it up.
Yeah. So I think, this is not going to be a big shock to anyone. I think the best argument against God's existence is the problem of evil, and particularly forms recently, and you've been interacting with this as well on your channel, or the specific problem of evil when it comes to animal suffering. So I think that those problems are really difficult to sort of grapple with as a Christian. And so I would say that that's probably the best argument that atheists have. Now, that isn't to say that, on balance, the total evidence suggests that Christianity is false or anything like that. That's just to say that this is a good argument, I think, that atheists raise is probably the best one that they've got. So yeah, that's my view.
Do you have stuff in the pipeline to talk about animal suffering specifically on your channel to bring people on?
So there's a couple things that I have in the background that I'm not exactly sure how it's all going to play out. So originally I actually reached out to Alex and I offered to do a debate with him, like me and him. We're going to do a debate on animal suffering, and I was going to treat, because he posted that video, that standalone video, like Christianity's biggest problem, which you responded to, and I thought your response was really interesting. But I just reached out to him. I was like, hey, what if we did a debate on this topic? And I was like, you could even treat your video as like your opening statement. But then it didn't really make a lot of sense, because his video was like kind of responding to a lot of stuff that Dr. William Lane Craig said in his work. And so it didn't really make sense as like a standalone opening. So that just kind of got left in the air. But then I started working with one of our supporters, one of our patrons, who is like really at this point steeped into the literature on animal suffering. So I started working with her in just making a response. We started a script, basically responding. And in responding to everything that Alex said in this video, the response has just gotten so out of hand. It's ridiculous how long the script is.
Yeah.
And and this is really just the outline. And so it's kind of like put a damp, like it's just some of my motivation has waned a little bit, just because it's such a daunting task. It's not to say that these objections or the responses are bad or anything like that. It's just that there's so much involved. Like, we've got to look at scripture, what scripture has to say about animals, and there's just so much to look at, and all the different theodicies, and so there's just a lot of literature to go through. So that project is kind of on at a standstill at this point. I want to pick it up. I want to do something with it, and I guess we just really haven't decided what to do with it. My focus lately has been largely on this conference that we have coming up in just about a month. So we're putting a whole lot more time and effort into that, and so that's kind of where my free time has been going lately. But I assume that I mean it could be that because Alex is actually going to be at this conference, and so it could be that me and him just have a kind of dialogue about it and just kind of see where it goes. I don't know, but yeah, I definitely plan on doing something along those lines on my channel at some point. It's a lot of stuff in the
Yeah. Do you guys have pets in the house?
Yeah, we have one dog, and we're thinking about getting another puppy.
Okay, nice. Yeah, one of the things that people said in the comment section in response to my response to Alex is that, well, I watch my pet, they're having a good time. And I always felt like, well, that wasn't exactly Alex's point. It's all about like suffering in the wild, like stuff that happens in nature. But yeah. You've interacted with quite a few, atheists on YouTube. Who would you say is, your favorite atheist YouTuber?
Well, we've already been talking about him. That'd be Alex O'Connor.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, there's a couple of reasons why I like him the most. And one of the reasons I was I was thinking about that today. One of the reasons why I like him most is that he's kind of unpredictable. Like recently he's been posting these videos like use or like his older videos.
Yeah.
And like he even recently came out and was talking about the definition of atheism, how it's like, you know, the lack theism definition of atheism, that like, you know, we just lack belief in God.
Yeah.
That definition is not used in academia. And he was like talking about this on his channel, and that's
right.
really unusual. It's not something that you would necessarily predict.
Yeah.
Just you know, if you were to take just a random atheist YouTuber, it's not something you would predict them to say.
Yeah.
So it's just really cool to see him lately, at least for sure, like upping his level and getting more and more philosophical and into the literature and getting more serious. So it's been a really cool thing to see. And him and I would say we're sort of friends at this point, even though we haven't met. We will meet soon, but yeah, he's definitely my favorite for a lot of reasons. But that's one of them, is that he's kind of unpredictable. I don't know where he's going. I mean, I hope eventually he comes around to Christianity. I believe he's the closest. If there were, I mean, I posted something. Okay, so I'm hosting a dialogue between Alex and Joe Schmid, who I'm sure you know. Joe Schmid. He's got a YouTube channel as well. He's awesome. Yeah. And so I'm hosting a dialogue between the two of them on the ontological argument. And right after I posted that video, someone in the comments was like, these two guys are just posers. Like they're posing as agnostics. They're really going to become Christians, or they really are already Christians, or something like that. That to me is like it's kind of cool. I know both of them personally, so I know that they're not. Yeah. But it's kind of cool that like people are suspecting that. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Now, part of your job is obviously to read stuff, you know, to get involved in the literature and to analyze the literature. How do you read books? What are your tips and tricks to most efficiently read through books? And, you know, how many books do you read a month?
So I am probably the worst person to ask, because running this YouTube channel, I do all these interviews and I do these dialogues and stuff. And so when I read a book, I'm usually reading like parts of books instead of like systematically working, you know, start to finish. And like, I would say if I do have some tips, even though I don't follow these myself, one thing is just like, if you want to read a book, just set time aside every day to read some of it. So even if it's 10 minutes a day, you can at least get through like, I think on average, something like 3 to 4 books a month if you just read it 10 minutes a day, something like that. It's a ridiculous, like, it seems like it would be more daunting, like you need to be reading a whole lot more in order to read more books, but you really don't. But for me, because I'm in so many different subjects all at once, and I'm also just not a very like routine kind of guy. I was talking about this on my channel recently in a Q&A, is that someone was asking me about my routine, my spiritual routine, and it's just, I've never really been one for routine. And that's not to say that it's a good thing, or that, you know, no one should, or that people should be like me, but it just doesn't come natural. And I'm starting to think of ways to sort of, you know, force myself to get into a routine that I do every day. But yeah, so that's my answer. Unfortunately, it's kind of all over the place. I don't read complete books. When I do actually pick up a book and start reading it, I'll read bits and pieces here and there. And so I've got all of these books all over my desk right now that I've read parts of. And so, yeah, it's kind of a mess.
Yeah, but I personally think that's actually part of, you know, being efficient in reading a book. I remember I used to think that if I pick up a book, well, you have to read it cover to cover in order to make sense of the whole kind of topic that is being presented. But then I remember one of my professors said, well, you need to develop the skill of knowing what you actually need. And you may not need the whole book as it presents itself to you. So you need to develop that skill of kind of figuring out by looking at the table of contents, well, what exactly is it that I want to kind of get from this? And then you dig into that and you put this book aside again. Yeah.
I'll say this, and because I've heard that too. It's like you don't have to. And there was someone else who said something along the same lines. Maybe it was C.S. Lewis, but it's like you don't have to read a whole book. You can just read like the chapter that sort of interests you. You know, if there's really only one in some book, which I think is interesting to think about. But one thing I was going to say in addition to that is that lately when I pick up a book, I read the introduction, because usually at least a lot of times in the introduction, they'll kind of lay out like what they're going to talk about in the book. So it'll be like
Yeah.
chapters 1 through 3 are about this topic, and then the next chapter is about this, and then the next one's about this. And so if you read the introduction, you can kind of get a good idea of like the chapters that would interest you. And so if that's what you want to do, I would suggest reading the introduction as well before just skipping to like the chapters based on the contents.
Yeah, that's right. Do you like have a good amount of chances to interact over like these arguments in real life, so to speak, like outside the context of YouTube, with friends or family and people around you?
Not a ton. Yeah, I would say not a whole lot. I mean, outside of my friends who are already in apologetics and philosophy, I mean, I bounce ideas off of people. But most of my work these days is not on trying to like figure out new arguments unless I'm like in the middle of doing a debate. So like when I was doing all of my study and stuff for my debate with Stephen Woodford, Rationality Rules, like that, I was I was reaching out to people all the time and walking through different responses to different things. And so I was very, very much active in that kind of thing. But most of the time I'm not doing that. When I'm not actively researching something or debating something, I don't really do a whole lot of that, or just like reaching out to people, asking them about arguments. And my wife is not into apologetics at all, so our conversation's about completely other things. And so we're huge Marvel fans, so we talk about Marvel a lot. And that's a ton of fun. But yeah, outside of like my friends who are already into philosophy and stuff, I don't really talk about these subjects.
But like, how does your wife specifically respond to, like, how do you share the stuff that's happening on your channel? Do you share like stories and you kind of talk through this stuff and pray through some of kind of the people you interact with?
So lately, because she joined the ministry full time recently, she's really the only reason that we're able to do these conferences and stuff, because she's like a ridiculously gifted event planner, it's her background, and so just made a whole lot of sense to bring her on so that we could do these conferences. But so lately she'll ask me like, how did your interview go? How did that go? And so and lately she's been like super interested in hearing the positive things that have come out of this interview. And so that's kind of the way that she gets the information of the things that are sort of going on from the channels. I'll give her like some of the highlights, some of the lowlights, and that's basically our conversations about this.
Hey, how do you handle like difficult comments, like people who just are very aggressive? Like, how do you handle that? Like I think there are two parts to that question. How do you handle it in terms of professionally, and how do you deal with it personally? Does this stuff get to you, and if so, how? Yeah, so dealing with criticism, there's one thing that I always remind myself of, and that is that criticism can go a couple different ways. So if the criticism is good, in the sense of like it's a good objection to your view, if that's what the criticism is, then you actually have an opportunity for growth. You can move away from a bad view, you can move toward a better view, and you can grow in knowledge and seeking truth and everything. So a good criticism is actually a really good thing. But a lot of times, because we're defensive, because we want to defend something that we already believed, we can get ourselves into trouble. But that's what I try to remind myself of, is that a good criticism is actually a really good opportunity to, advance in these intellectual virtues, so to speak. So, but if it's a bad criticism, and those are really the only two, if it's either a good criticism, maybe it's irrelevant. And if it's irrelevant, then it's just a bad criticism. Yeah. So bad criticisms, you shouldn't really worry about, because it's bad. It's not, it doesn't relate to your view. It's not a good objection. It shouldn't move you that way. So if it's a bad criticism, it shouldn't bother you. So that's what I try to remind myself of, is that criticism, whether it's good or bad, it shouldn't actually bother you. If it's good, it's an opportunity for growth. If it's bad, it's irrelevant. You don't need to worry about it. So I try to remind myself that when it comes to criticism, I'm not always successful. Criticism still gets to me. I think that's just sort of human nature, is that we want to be right all the time. And so when we are critiqued in any kind of way, whether it's bad or good, our defenses go up. And so just some of the psychological things that happen to everybody, same things happen to me. But that's what I try to remind myself of. When it comes to like really nasty comments from
Atheist doesn't have to be atheist either. There's I mean, because I talk about Catholicism on my channel every now and then. I'll get some nasty comments from well, just really anybody. And I would say the nastiest comments definitely come from atheists. So Catholics will just be kind of condescending or something like that. But it doesn't happen. It doesn't just come from Catholics either, because sometimes I'll say something that's sort of pro-Catholicism and then I'll get comments from Protestants. So it happens on all sides. But what I was going to say is that when it comes to like really nasty comments, like if someone is just coming on my channel to make some kind of personal attack or try to psychologize me or make some unfounded comment about my psychological motivations, just be really disrespectful, I just immediately hide them from the channel. I have no need or desire to have this person commenting on my channel. There's no purpose for it. I try to keep everything respectful. And so if someone disagrees with what I say, and they've got like a list of things and they've responded point by point, that actually doesn't bother me at all, as long as they're respectful. But if they start throwing insults and start saying really, silly, nasty things, or trying to make up motivations for what's motivating me to say things, usually those are the people that I'm like, this isn't really worth having these comments on my channel. So I'll usually hide those people because it's just not worth it. And yeah, so that's basically my sort of overall approach to criticism. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really helpful. One of the things, again, that I learned over the course of doing this YouTube thing is that, well, I mean, there is a real opportunity for you to actually grow when you look at the right comments in the right way. I thought, I mean, I think most of the script, I mean, all of the scripts by now, like I have them proofread or criticized by a philosopher actually before they go out. And then I always feel like, well, once he's gone through it, I actually got to know him on your Facebook page. His name is Dan, but I can't remember his family name.
Oh, Dan Miller.
Dan Miller, yes, exactly. He offered, after my first response to rationality rules on the Kalam and free will, he made a couple of comments, and then I think he said, well, I'd be happy to help you out with certain things. And since then, like I send him most of my stuff, and so I always feel like
that is like the best decision you could have made. I have like a whole group of philosophers that comment on my scripts when I do scripts. Most of my videos are interviews, so that they don't need to comment on any of that. But if I have a whole script written out, I have a whole list of philosophers that I have proofread. So that's like the best thing you could do.
Yeah, that's right. And so, I always, I mean, and I always know, well, when I send him my stuff, I mean, there's, and, he just really kind of drills down to the core issues and forces me to be more precise. And then once the whole thing is done, I feel like, well, now it's as solid as anything can be. But then you put it out there on YouTube, and then people, they will have a go at it, and you realize, well, there's actually even more that I need to work on. I find this really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that is kind of one of the downsides to having all of these different people comment, is that like some of the criticisms are good, but I'm like, do I really want to rework this entire section just to take care of like this one little minute possible objection that might come up that can be clarified? I don't know. So yeah, having all of these different comments can make things a bit challenging, but that's where you just got to kind of figure it out on your own and figure out what's going to work best for your channels. And
yeah, that's right. Now, I want to move on and talk a bit about the Bible. First, like, again, from an apologetics perspective, what do you think is, the most challenging story or most challenging, paragraph or chapter in the Bible that is brought up most often in conversations with atheists, from your experience?
For sure, there's probably two. The number one would be the genocide of the Canaanites.
Yep.
And the second one would be slavery in the Bible. So slavery is a topic that, man, I've done something on this, and I think I was actually planning something, and it just sort of fell through. But slavery is a topic I really haven't covered on my channel. But genocide is one that I haven't done either. Although I'm planning a dialogue, if it ever can get scheduled. I'm planning to have a dialogue between Randall Rouser and Matt Flanagan on the topic. So yeah, so that's my thought. Like, those are probably the two that are most commonly brought up. But I mean, personally, like I'm not a Bible apologist, so a lot of these topics and stuff, they kind of just sort of in virtue of being an apologist, they kind of interest me, but they're not like my interest. I think that there are better people to
Yeah.
deal with sort of biblical apologetics. So, because I have my own thoughts on how all of that works, and to me, it's like even if you give everything that the atheist wants in this case, nothing really follows from it that's significant in relation to whether or not Christianity is true or false. So,
Hmm.
like, yes, maybe there are some interpretations that have really bad consequences and suggest things that, yeah, that conflicts with my moral intuitions. But what are
Hmm.
the options at that point? You can just opt for a different interpretation. That's
Hmm.
one option. Another option would be you could alter your view of divine inspiration.
Yep.
So there are some really sophisticated views of inspiration. There's a guy named John Walton who basically says that if you find some kind of human error in the Bible, that actually doesn't challenge divine inspiration, because inspiration is really about what God is doing with the text. It's not about what the humans are doing with the text. So even if the humans affirm some error, what that would mean is that God was sort of accommodating himself to the level of the humans of that time,
Yep.
so it doesn't actually challenge divine inspiration. And obviously these views are very sophisticated and controversial and stuff, but my view is that all of this stuff is just you immediately get deep into the weeds. And so what seems like maybe a conflict on the surface, once you actually start to really look deep at this and understand that there's different interpretations available to you, different ways to look at divine inspiration that could completely do away with these concerns altogether. And then there's a question of, do we even need inerrancy as Christians to maintain that Christianity is true, which you don't. And it's just like there's all of these things that, to me, when someone starts to discuss the Bible, I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's good, important to talk about these issues, but
Hmm.
because it's not really threatening to the truth of Christianity, it's not really a big deal in my mind.
Hmm.
And that's kind of where I am from.
Okay, cool. Hey guys, I just want to kind of respond to some of the comments with the internet. I got the fastest internet possible at the moment. Like the fastest I can get in Lebanon. So if Cameron is lagging behind, it's just because the internet can't cope with streaming this stuff. I'm sorry. Like that's the best I can do from Beirut. So Cameron, I want to pick up on this again, the Bible again. How do
Okay.
how do you handle or navigate reading the Bible or looking at the text as an apologist, on the one hand, and reading the Bible as well, Cameron Bertuzzi, who seeks God and who wants to learn more about how to, live like according to what he wants from Cameron? How do you kind of handle that?
Yeah, so lately I haven't really distinguished between the two. So if I
Mm-hmm.
go and read the Bible, it's usually in relation to like learning. It's more about studying the Bible as opposed to reading the Bible
Mm-hmm.
for me. So if I go and read some text, I'm usually supplementing it with a commentary or trying to figure out, what is this particular passage saying about some particular issue that was raised. And so and that really goes back to my failure as someone who doesn't really have a routine. There was
Yeah.
a time in my life when I had a really good routine of like reading the Bible. I would read a chapter of some book, and then I would read the corresponding commentary for that chapter, and I got a whole lot out of that when I actually did that as like part of my routine. But I've slipped off from that. I don't do it anymore, and there's no good reason why I don't. But
Mm-hmm.
that when I was doing that, I got so much out of it. And I mean, I don't think that you necessarily have to read the Bible as apart from actually studying it, as long as you're doing that consistently enough.
Yeah.
That's kind of, and maybe that's the wrong view to have, but my view is that if you're studying the Bible every single day, at least in bits and pieces, and you're putting a whole lot of effort into understanding it, I think that's a really, it's a good thing. But but yeah, that personally, I fail in that respect.
I see. Now, Cameron, what do you do when you're not on YouTube? What are some of your hobbies? And then what YouTube channels that have nothing to do with apologetics or theology do you follow? What does Cameron do when he watches YouTube just for fun?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things that I watch on YouTube that are not apologetics related at all. One of them is Super Smash Brothers content. So my brother, the atheist that inspired this entire thing, he and me and some other friends, we play Super Smash Brothers together whenever we can. And so that's something that I do in my spare time, my free time. And so there are some pros that I watch on YouTube that are really good. They make really funny and entertaining videos. And actually, when I go work out, those are the videos that I watch because they're so entertaining that I forget that I'm working out. If I listen to apologetic stuff, I may get bored. I may get like, I may remember that I'm working out or something. So those videos, like I try to save that content for when I'm working out because it's like so entertaining. It's I don't know. So that's one of the kinds of content that I watch. And another kind of content that I watch, and it's usually at like night when I'm trying to wind down and just like chill out or relax, or if I'm experiencing some anxiety, I might put on one of these videos, and it's like restoration videos, like restoring some old super rusty hammer or like some old rusty mechanical device. I don't know anything about any of this stuff, but it's super calming and it's super interesting as well, like how they get all this rust off and how they bring it back to life. Like that kind of stuff is I don't know, I just find it really interesting. And so in my spare time, those are really the main two types of videos that I watch on YouTube.
Okay, cool. So, guys, I want to give you the opportunity to, put in questions if you want to ask Cameron something or myself. Just the last question before we get to pick up those questions from the audience. What are you like besides the big conference that you're setting up? What are some of the dreams you have for this year or even beyond for capturing Christianity?
That's a good question because the conferences are probably the number one thing right now, trying to set those up. So aside from that, I've got this whole office set up in my home, and actually part of the reason why I wanted to set this up the way that it is so that I can invite philosophers and theologians and experts here personally, so that I could do interviews in person because those are so much better than doing them online. I mean, you and I have already been experiencing some technical issues today that you don't have when you're actually just having a dialogue with someone in person. So much better. And anyone who does interviews knows that it's just so much better to have the person there. So that's something that I've been focusing on, is finding ways. One of the nice things is that I live in Houston, and so Houston is like just randomly the apologetics hub of the world. There's so many different philosophers and apologists here that already live in Houston, like Lee Strobel is here, Nancy Pearcey. There's a ton of people, and some of a lot of them will teach sort of remotely at HBU, and so every now and then they'll be here just twice a year or something. Like I think Nicola Kona is on staff at HBU, Dr. William Lane Craig, David Baggett is here. There's so many people here, and so eventually I want to have these people come into my office, the people there in Houston, but also I want to be able to invite these philosophers to just fly here, maybe for a day or something, and just do the interview here, and then go back home. And it's just going to be so much better of a method of doing these interviews and talking about these subjects. I did one recently with Lee Strobel where we were talking about the conference and his latest book and everything, and it was so good to have someone here in person and have a dialogue with them. It was just so much better. So that's one of my biggest dreams and goals, is to have more of those conversations in person in my office. So that's probably like the number one thing aside from the conferences.
Cool. How do you handle that practically with with the kids being around and stuff and having interviews? How do you make sure that no one kind of crashes your office?
So since my wife is now on staff, she has been helping wrangle the kids and stuff. But also our kids are in, my son, he's 3, he's in daycare. And so that's when I schedule all of my streams, is times when he's at school. And my daughter, she's in kindergarten. She's going to first grade. So right now she's at, she's summer. So she's not in school, but she's been going to camps, and my wife has been amazing scheduling all of these different camps that she can go to. So right now, both of my kids are, my daughter, I dropped her off at camp this morning, and my son, I dropped him off at daycare. So that's how I manage, is to basically get them where they're best going to be and where I'm best going to be. And so, yeah.
Okay, cool. So I want to pick up one of the questions that were asked, and you're free to answer in whatever way you see it most fit. What are the odds that you're going to end up converting to Catholicism?
I actually saw that. I just
Uh,
noticed that I can hit this little comment thing and I can see all the comments coming in.
yeah.
So yeah, introverted Christian. I think I've seen him on my channel as well. So the odds that I convert to Catholicism right now, I mean, it's very difficult to say because I have a few very significant hangups, and so I don't know. I mean, it could be possible that eventually I overcome all of these hangups, but right now it doesn't seem very likely. Could be that later on I do, but right now it just doesn't seem very likely at all. So, and those odds could change. Just it's very difficult today. Very difficult day. Very difficult question.
Yeah, sure. Have you ever attended Mass in a Catholic church?
I have. I've attended mass with Matt Frad at his
Oh,
church when he was in Georgia. So yeah, I've attended that, and we actually talked about it on his channel. So it was interesting. I mean, I really like mass. I think that it's one of the things I like about it is that it's so Christ centered as opposed to like some of the services, the non-denominational churches or just Protestant churches, I suppose more generally, they're kind of, I mean, I guess it depends on the church and the denomination, but a lot of these non-denominational churches, it almost feels like you're walking into a concert, and
yeah.
it's really about like all the people and the way they look and dress and sing, and if their ability to play guitar and stuff, and the how funny is the pastor, how good is he at public speaking, it's more about like these other sort of attributes that these humans have as opposed to it all being about God. And when you go to something like Catholic Mass, I don't get any of that impression. Like these guys are wearing these sort of silly looking robes and stuff, and it's like it's not about that. It's about Jesus. And so that's one thing that I really like about Catholic Mass is that it seems to be centered on the right thing. And like the mass that I went to with Matt, I think everybody was sort of faced forward. So it wasn't that the priest was like preaching at everyone and like facing them. Everyone was sort of facing the same way. So I thought that was also cool. It's like it's not that this person is up here looking at everyone else. It's everybody's looking at Jesus. That those little things really kind of I really like and appreciate those. I mean, I also appreciate the fact that like my wife and I love travel. So when we've gone to Europe a couple times, and every time we go to Europe, I like always want to go in all of the different churches because they're so beautiful. And that's actually that's one of the biggest reasons, or one of the best reasons. And a lot of people are going to hate me for this, but I think that's one of the best reasons to become a Catholic is because these churches are so beautiful. They're amazing,
Yeah.
and especially these older ones. So whenever I go to these different places, I'm always looking forward to looking at how beautiful these churches are. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, cool. Well, let's wrap it up here since there aren't any more questions. Cameron, thanks so much again for coming on. Thanks again for being the inspiration that you are and for, challenging people, challenging Christians to think well and challenging atheists to think well too. Guys, again, don't forget to hop over to Capturing Christianity if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe. Again, you find the link in the description box. And yeah, this was it. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks again for all the support, for the encouragement, and see you the next time. Bye, guys.